Well, hello out there, and here I go again. I'm going to keep on doing this until I get it right. You are listening to KPCA LP, Petaluma, California, at 103.3 FM and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. And this is the Midnight Skeptic. The views of the Midnight Skeptic are not, repeat, not necessarily the views of KPCA or any of its affiliates. Well, hello again out there. This is the Midnight Skeptic, and I am recording this on Wednesday, the 28th of April, and it's relatively early in the afternoon, like 3:15 right now, Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to try to do this and then get in there and listen to President Biden's speech to Congress and see what his kind of boring speaking style will convey to everybody. And I know, you all are saying out there, well, that's the pot calling the kettle beige because of what I said about his speaking style. Well, I guess, okay, let me get one thing clear. The views of the Midnight Skeptic, and I'm going to be expressing some views that a couple of them are controversial, and one of them in particular is borderline obscene, but I'm going to say it anyway later on in the show when I start talking about Rick Santorum, another one of these vomit-inducing Republicans out there. Okay, enough of that for right now. I'd like to start the show off. Well, first of all, I'm going to get my shout-outs out of the way. As far as I can remember them, I just have on my notes here the words shout-outs. Well, I'm going to do them. From memory. Whoa. That's asking a lot of my neurons and connections. But I want to get a few good news items out of the way. I really hate being as negative as I've been on a lot of my recent shows. But as long as Republicans have some power in this country, then there's going to be a lot of bad news to relate to you. Some of the news is something that people can do something about, like vote, for instance. Okay. Shout-outs. Okay, the Sonora crowd. Bob and Sandy Fisher and Brad and Martha. Darrell Larson, Bronco rider. Judy May and Leonidas Maciel. And down in Mexico City, we have... here's the first brain freeze of the night. Rosamalia Lopez Negrete, and I wasn't looking at my notes. Okay. Stan and Kathy Gustafson down in Pacifica, and Rich and Kathy Berger over in another brain freeze. They come on now and then. Sebastopol. I remember eventually everything. Geraldine Goldfinger out on Long Island. Dr. Dave Rubin and his wife in Raleigh-Durham. Nelson and Alice Lydell. Nelson, I haven't heard from you in quite a while. I hope everything's okay with you guys down in Sarasota, Florida. My cousin Kathy over in Stockton, and my cousin Chanda up in Reno, in the Reno area. I'm looking forward to the wedding up there, Christiana's wedding, and which had to be postponed for a while because of Mr. COVID-19. My brother Brandon down in Santan Valley, Arizona, and my niece, who is a nurse down there, Andrea. Take care of yourself, Andrea, and I'm glad that this thing that we're all going through is almost over now. Karina Hilliard down in the southern part of Arizona. Again, another brain freeze on the actual name of the town that she is in, but she's a animal control officer down there. Dave and Rosie Takach up in Sacramento. They listen in occasionally. I appreciate that. Local people, Tim Conrad, who was a Sonora denizen. He is a photographer extraordinaire down here in Petaluma now. And Mickey Huff, the godfather of Project Censored, he listens in every now and then, and he has his own show. It's probably going on, actually, now that I'm looking at the clock. His show on KPCA is going on right now. So those of you who want an honest, forthright, lefty opinion about things, check him out. www.kpca.fm, the Project Censored. And then that program, which my audio engineer, Dennis, used to help produce in the radio station here at PCA, Petaluma Community Access. It's repeated over on KPFA over on Berkeley, and I believe it's on Friday at 1 o'clock. Okay. All right. I promised you some good news, and I am going to deliver. All right. White paint. Well, what's so good about white paint? A lot of roofs since the dawn of paint, the dawn of history, have been painted white to reflect off a lot of the sunlight and a lot of the heating, and to cut down on that. Well, what we've got here is a super white paint. Painting rooftops with a new type of super reflective white paint could help reduce the effects of global heating in buildings and curb the need for air conditioning. The paint, this new fangled paint, is made with barium sulfate, and it's a pigment. Rather than the conventional white paint pigments, titanium dioxide. And this new barium sulfate-based white paint, not on the market yet, but it's coming, does not absorb any UV light from the sun and reflects 98% of all sunlight. Traditionally, white paint reflects only 80% of sunlight, and the bad thing is it still absorbs the warming ultraviolet rays, the UV rays. And this article that I got all this from, it said it will be on the market in about 2 years. So that good news, good news, good news. Another bit of good news. Congressperson Rosa DeLauro, Lauro, she's a Democratic member of the House of Representatives from Connecticut. She just introduced the quote-unquote SWEET Act bill, H.R. 2772. She did that like a couple of weeks ago. It would impose a federal excise tax on most sugary drinks. Hello there, Coke and Pepsi and Dr. Pepper and I don't know what all else. Well, I guess 7-Up has its share of sugar in it. Except if there's, sugar-free this or that. I'm not sure that the artificial sweeteners are good for you either. But, okay. Um, Big Soda is taking some pages from the playbook of Big Tobacco. There was a bill introduced and passed in the California state legislature that would prohibit local communities from passing soda tax laws. I think the city of Berkeley has its own soda tax that was passed a while back. Added, I'm not sure exactly, 1 or 2 cents per can of soda. Why are we doing this? And other than to raise money, it is sugary drinks, which are endemic in the poorer communities, and it's a big contributor to diabetes and heart disease and obesity in our nation. A lot of the blame for all of those things can be laid at the doorstep of Big Soda. Okay. And the federal excise tax, in addition to discouraging the purchase of those drinks, will also raise a couple of $1 billion to fight these scourges in the poorer communities: obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. Big Soda is following in the steps of Big Tobacco, trying to muddy the waters and sow doubt. And they spent, in this article that I read just 2 days ago, they have spent $5.9 million in lobbying efforts in California to prevent communities from imposing their own local soda taxes. And I'm not sure what sweetened drinks encompasses, other than, Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, and all those. A lot of the fruit drinks that you can buy, like grape cranberry drink, have artificial sweeteners and sugar in them. If you look at the label I shop at Safeway a lot, so I purchase a lot of my grape juice there. If you look on the label, if it says grape drink, that means it's not 100% grape juice and it has added sugar in it. If it says 100% grape juice, then there's no added sugar, but grapes themselves have plenty of sugar. I just like to drink grape juice myself. I used to get Welch's, which is delicious. This isn't a commercial for Welch's grape drink, or grape juice, I should say. But it's just something that I happen to like, and the amount of sugar in it is not that bad for me. And I eat healthy otherwise, lots of vegetables and blah, blah, blah. And geez, I can't remember the last time that I had a Coke or a Pepsi or one of those kind of drinks. When I go out for dinner, I'll do one of two things. I'll either order a Lagunitas beer, usually a little something. Now that is a commercial. They're not paying me to say that. It's just a fact. Or if not that, then I'll order a glass of iced tea with a squeeze of lemon in it. That's my dinner drinks on the rare occasions that I do go out to dinner. Okay. Another bit of good news. Boy, I am full of good news today. Cecil Roberts, he's the president of the United Mine Workers of America. He accepts President Joe Biden's encouragement of the U.S. to move away from coal and other fossil fuels in exchange for, he's not just saying this out of the goodness of his heart. He wants to see, and this is a quote from him, a true energy transition to renewable energy. And what he wants to ensure renewable energy jobs for the 7,000, give or take, coal miners who lost their jobs last year. Well, I can go for that. The the senator from Joe Manchin. He was giving a talk at this conference, and he came up on the stage right after Cecil Roberts. And this Joe Manchin has been kind of a maverick Democrat and rather uncooperative when it comes to hewing the Democratic Party line, so to speak. But he was all in favor of this transition, at least so he said at this conference that he and Cecil Roberts gave their talks at. But anyway, there's hope. And I've said on previous shows when I've been bashing the coal industry that I feel very bad for previous workers in the coal industry that have lost their jobs because wind and solar power and some nuclear power have been gaining traction in this country, and along with cheaper natural gas, which I hope that will go away fairly soon as well. Okay. So that's all pretty good news. Even the boss of the United Mine Workers of America Association is getting behind President Biden's efforts to promote a Green New Deal, so to speak. Okay. Okay, so much for the good news. That was 3 items of good news here. One short thing to kind of balance out the good news. There's always has to be some bit of bad news in everybody's life. Alabama, that font of understanding and tolerance, and I'm being sarcastic, they have banned just recently, and Kay Ivey the governor of Alabama, has just signed this bill that passed through the Republican-controlled legislature. It would ban all transgender youth from participating in sports, all the way from kindergarten through grade 12. Republicans are nothing if not fans of overkill. Okay, I will expand on that later. The past couple of Midnight Skeptic shows have dealt with the Republicans' war on trans people in general, youth in particular, and they rationalize it as protecting our daughters. Okay. I'm going to introduce a new segment on the Midnight Skeptic show, and I hope to, there's plenty of these to talk about, but it's called the Ignorant Creeps Update. Okay, starting off, this is the inaugural segment of this, Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene have sort of become the face of the modern GOP, and they're both acolytes of the orange bloat bag sociopath whose name I will never mention again on this show. But I'm tired of bashing them. So right now I want to riff on Rick Santorum. Do, 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 do. Okay, he was a senator from Ohio for quite a while, and he was defeated by, hmm, I forget who defeated him for re-election, but it was back in 2008, I believe. And he's in addition to being a senator, a Republican senator, he was a right-wing evangelical Christian, and he was very, very anti-gay. And he teed off on those who would be in favor of gay marriage back in the day when it was still being argued about. One of his sayings is gay marriage, in fact, homosexuality in general, undermines the fabric of society. And he is not in favor of moral relativism because it would allow incest, bestiality, pedophilia if same-sex relations are legalized. Well, along comes Obergefell versus Hodges in 2015, which legalized same-sex marriage, and our society has not fallen apart, except that you might think that our society was on the verge of falling apart when the orange bloat bag sociopath was elected president, but that is over. Now it's just a matter of weeding out Trumpers, which means Republicans, out of positions of authority in our country. Okay, in 2012, Rick Santorum ran in the Republican primary for president. He didn't win. He was just who won for Republicans? Gosh, I can't remember who. Who Obama ran against in the 2012 election. Jeez. Anyway, it's too ancient history for me. But anyway, when Rick Santorum was a senator and he was going on these rants about anti-gay marriage, he came out with all these ridiculous things about equating gay marriage with bestiality and pedophilia and all those nonsense things. Dan Savage, in 2003, he had a radio show, and he was also a columnist. And he wrote a column called Savage Love that appeared in some magazines, Playboy being one of them, and I think Cosmo might have been another one. But anyway, he was a sex advice and love advice columnist, and I've seen him on many talk shows, and he's, aside from being gay, he's also quite liberal, and he gives a liberal twist to a lot of his writings. Anyway, he created a contest on his radio show and in his columns, asking for his readers and listeners to create a new definition of the word Santorum. Hello, Rick. Okay, so a whole bunch of people sent in their suggestions, and the winner of this contest Okay, and here I was warning my listeners and viewers, hello there, YouTube, uh, that the winning definition of the word Santorum is, quote, the frothy mixture of lubricant and fecal matter that is sometimes the byproduct of anal sex. Now, if you people want to Google Santorum, you will see this definition. He has, he meaning Rick Santorum, has achieved some notoriety within the last couple of weeks that I will be talking about. But for a period of time back in 2003, 2004, 2005, if you Googled Santorum, that's the definition that would come up at the top. And then in second place would be information about Rick Santorum himself. Okay. The reason that Rick Santorum has achieved some infamy within the last couple of weeks is a talk he gave to, okay, what's the organization? The Young Americans Foundation. And he's on YouTube and he's on Google if you want to Google his ridiculous speech. But Young Americans Foundation is the successor organization to Young Americans for Freedom, or YAF, or YAF. And embarrassingly, I have to make an admission here that when I was going to San Jose State, and this was in the very late 1960s, I was out of the Navy and I had some units to make up because I D'd my way out of UC Davis right out of high school. I was just not ready for college at that time, so I D'd my way into the Navy. And then as a consequence, when I got out of the Navy and then had to go back and make up some units that I didn't get credit for when I was originally going to college, I ended up at San Jose State. And I was in the, I was looking for a team to join, a basketball team. I really loved playing basketball, and if my knees didn't ache so much now, I would probably be out there shooting hoops and, playing 3-on-3 half court. I loved it. But anyway, there was a list of teams in the intramural San Jose State sports program. Excuse me, I got to rub my eye here. Itchy eyes. I wonder what that's a symptom of. Okay. One of the teams was YAF. Well, I didn't know what they were, but they gave a contact information of this guy who was organizing the team and was a member of the YAF. And so I called him up. This was before cell phones, and so you had to use these ancient things called dial phones. So anyway, I called him, and he said, yeah, show up at the next game, and he told me which gym it was going to be in. And so I did, and I played with them. I was, one of their better players, actually. And so I began to hear some of the things that the Young Americans for Freedom stood for. They were a conservative college youth organization. And at that time, I was kind of a clueless doofus when it came to politics and awareness in general. I just wanted to play some basketball. I just wanted to get my degree and get on with my life, such as it was at the time. I was aware of the ferment in college protests. Do you remember those sayings, on strike, shut it down? To me, the long hairs, the hippies, were the ones who wanted to shut down the colleges, and which kind of turned me off. And I remember once I had to I didn't get into a fight, but I kind of had to push my way into a classroom, one of my history classes there at San Jose State. Well, San Jose State wasn't as hardcore as the uh, protesters up at San Francisco State. Remember S.I. Hayakawa, who was the president of San Francisco State at one point? You know, he got up on top of a car with his bullhorn and tried arguing with the protesters. Well, that didn't go over too well, but I somewhat sympathized with the straight people versus the long-haired hippie people. Anyway, so I played on the intramural team, the YAF, Young Americans for Freedom. Well, as time went on, and well, incidentally, let me tell you about the Young American Foundation. They were founded in 1969. No. Hey, wait a minute. I promise you, I did write the founding date down. Oh, here we go. The Young Americans for Freedom was founded on September 11th, 9/11. Not that 9/11, but this was in 1960 at the home of William F. Buckley Jr. at his house. And his house was in Sharon, Connecticut at that time. And so their founding principles, I'm not going to go into all of that, but they were pretty ridiculously founding statement. It's called the Sharon Statement. Okay. Anyway, my notes. Why can't I organize them better? Okay, so cut ahead to Rick Santorum. I'm not sure, but he might have been going to college at the time, at more or less the same time I was going to college. I think I'm a little bit older than him, but, well, what does it matter? Okay, cut ahead. In 1971, Young Americans for Freedom morphed into Young America Foundation. I guess raising money is one of their main goals, I guess. So they're... Anyway, they hosted this conference. I don't know where they actually were, but I saw this statement by Rick Santorum, and in the back of him was the logos of the Young Americans Foundation, and I could imagine that there was college-age kids and young people in their 20s out in the audience hanging on this creep's every word. Okay, what you should not take from his speech is any historical information at all about the founding of our nation. Okay, I'm just going to highlight what he said, and I would imagine that the majority of the young people out in his audience are Christians well, right-wing Christians, mostly evangelicals, and the history that they get, or the history that they pay attention to, in Christian schools and Christian colleges totally misrepresent the founding of this country. He said, okay, now I'm going back to what Rick Santorum actually said, that our country, the United States, was founded upon Judeo-Christian Mosaic laws. And I would argue with that premise to a large extent. Our founding documents are what he attributes to Judeo-Christian Mosaic laws. And he goes on to say how other civilizations, more contemporary or more ancient, like the Greeks and the Romans and the Chinese and on up into more modern countries, Germany, France, and England, how they've all changed, they've evolved. But then he says this ridiculous thing, not us, like the United States has not changed from these Judeo-Christian background laws. Well, that's not true. I mean, our country has evolved. A big way that we've evolved is we had to fight a civil war over the subject of slavery. And then he says, when the Europeans first came over here, the Pilgrims and the people who settled the Jamestown plantation, the U.S. was founded in a blank slate. These were his words. There was nothing here. That just goes to show you how ignorant he is. And then he goes on to say there isn't much Native American culture in American culture. Well, in addition to being an ignorant creep, he's also a racist and ignorant when it comes to our actual historic background. Okay, and a reason that he gave in this speech, that the reason that Europeans came here was to preserve their religious liberty. Okay, religious liberty, as that term has evolved in this country, is the freedom to discriminate. There's nothing more about it than that. Like that stupid-ass baker in Colorado that wants the religious freedom to not have to sell his cakes to gay couples, or that lady that owns the florist shop down in Texas that refuses to sell her, wedding bouquets to same-sex couples. That to them is freedom. And this is something that Rick Santorum said. They wanted to preserve their religious freedom. And the ability to discriminate against other people goes all the way back to the Pilgrims. They wanted religious freedom to believe what they believed up in the Plymouth colony and so on and so on. They expelled people who didn't toe the party line, so to speak, back in the Plymouth Rock days. This religious freedom business should be dispensed with. Christians just want the freedom to discriminate against people who don't believe the same things that they believe. And that's really what it boils down to. Okay, have we had enough about Rick Santorum? I wish that he would just disappear from the national scene here. And for those of you who were offended by the official definition of what Santorum is, well, that's too bad. It was Dan Savage and his listeners who came up with that definition, not me. Okay. Complete change of subject here. The topic of reparations is being discussed seriously in this country. And what people who bring this topic up are talking about is reparations for slavery. And I am sort of in agreement with that concept. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the justifications for it. But I am of mixed minds about this. Well, first of all, if anybody deserves reparations, it's the Native Americans, the First Peoples, or the Indians, as we no longer call them, and rightly so. There was a group of people that did gain some sort of reparations for how we treated them, and that was the Japanese Americans who, by FDR's order number 1066, rounded up Japanese Americans, mainly in the western part of the United States, and confined them to what only could be called concentration camps. And when I mentioned this to another friend of mine that I was having this discussion with, he said, well, that kind of the use of the word concentration camps kind of takes away from the concept of concentration camps. It should be applied only to what the Nazis did to the Jewish people, during World War II, the final solution, as it were. Well, okay, a couple of things to say about that. Although the main purpose of the concentration camps in Nazi Germany was to exterminate the Jewish population of Germany and the countries that the Nazis conquered. But it wasn't only them, and I don't in any way want to denigrate or belittle or play down the 6 million Jewish people that died at the hands of the Nazis. But there were also Rom people, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, they speak Romani. There was a relatively large population of Romani people, mainly in Romania, although that country is not named after them. But all over Hungary and Czechoslovakia and Poland, there were Rom people that the Nazis rounded up as well. It was in no way on the scale of the Nazis rounding up the Jewish people. And another group were homosexuals. They had to wear pink triangles on their prison garb to identify them as to why they were being incarcerated. And again, I don't want to belittle the plight of the Jewish people in Nazi Germany, who died in such horrible numbers there. Which brings me back to concentration camps and the use of the term concentration camps. There was no other thing that you could call these relocation camps but concentration camps. The one that comes to mind right now is Manzanar. That's down in the desert of Southern California where um, the Japanese people were confined. And there was a way station here in the Bay Area, which was kind of like the first place that Japanese that were rounded up were sent to. And that was Tanforan Park. At that time, it was a horse racing venue. Now it's a mall, a shopping mall on that site. But the Japanese were confined to the horse stables at Tanforan Park until they could be shipped down to Manzanar or other sites where we were confining Japanese people. There's no other word for them except concentration camps, to my way of thinking. Okay, now I got off on this topic because we did pay reparations to the Japanese people. Now, it wasn't much, and their businesses that they lost during World War II were not compensated adequately or at all. They did get some monetary compensation. Okay, so you could say that it was reparations. Okay. Again, like I say, if anybody really truly deserves reparations, it's the American First Nation indigenous peoples here whose land was stolen. And if you wanted to stretch the definition a little bit, you could say that reservations are a form of concentration camps. The worst lands, the most useless lands that no whites wanted, well, that's what the Indians could have, and they had to stay there. Okay, back to the current discussion. This echo in the headphones kind of throws me off on my pronunciation. I mean, my pronunciation isn't all that great to begin with, but okay. There's an issue in the latest Mother Jones, and I'm going to hold it up to the YouTube screen. Okay. It's May, June of this year. And Black Land Matters is the overarching topic of this issue. And the United States Department of Agriculture has been guilty, I'm going to use that word, has been guilty of being responsible for the loss of land by black farmers. And the percentage of black farmers that still exist are about 18% of the high point of black land ownership. And like I say, the United States Department of Agriculture has been largely responsible for that because, well, let me read a few things here to you. The modern United States Department of Agriculture took shape under the New Deal as Southern Democrats used their enormous influence to ensure that all those new federal programs wouldn't challenge segregation. Okay, as documented in political scientist Ira Rathnelson's 2005 book, and this is the title of it. I'm going to go out and get this book and read it myself. When Affirmative Action Was White. God. They made sure that federal resources, the USDA workers, which were almost totally white, distributed the monies under local control. through the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933, which was designed to pay farmers to curtail production. The government established county committees that helped determine and distribute farm subsidies. Well, counties in the South, okay, hello there, Jim Crow. They made sure that black farmers were not the recipients of a lot of this government largesse. There's other things in here. The current the United States Department of Agriculture head is Tom Vilsack, and although he's a Democrat, and he was the USDA head under the Obama administration, there have been a lot of gripes about his running of the organization because he has not exactly bent over backwards to right some of the wrongs that have been done to black farmers. Okay. I don't want to read all of this, but okay, the plan, land redistribution and monies distributed to black farmers. The plan Biden floated, by contrast, downplayed past problems and heralded the historic progress, well, that's debatable, on civil rights and inequality accomplished by the Obama-Biden administration. The plan didn't include policies to address specific wrongs perpetrated against black farmers, but rather offered general policies to help non-white farmers. And then Biden announced he had selected Vilsack. Now, we're talking last year. Well, not last year, but when Biden was inaugurated, January 20th of this year. Lost my place. It's, who's quoting this? Okay, Michael Stovall, a black farmer and Pigford claimant. Now, Pigford was a lawsuit brought against the USDA back in 1999, which was finally adjudicated in the early 2000s. I'm not going to go into that right now, but on a future show, I will talk about the Pigford Supreme Court decision that ostensibly helped black farmers. But, okay, later. It's very disappointing they even want to consider him coming back, him meaning Tom Vilsack, coming back after what he has done to limited resources farmers and what he continues to do to destroy lives. That might be a bit of hyperbole, but anyhow, if we had fair dealings by the United States Department of Agriculture for all this time, well, we would still have a goodly proportion of farms as black-owned farms. Okay, I will expound on the Supreme Court decision in a later show. Okay, we're coming up. I've got a little bit of time left. Again, I'm running short, as always. We're coming up on the 100th anniversary of one of the most horrendous white massacres of blacks in this country. At 5:08 a.m. on June 1st of 1921, that's like a month away, a whistle pierced the pre-dawn quiet of Tulsa, Oklahoma. There was disagreement later about whether the sound came from a steam engine on the road tracks or from a factory in the center of the booming oil town, which was Tulsa. But there was no doubting its meaning. It was the signal for as many as 10,000 armed white Tulsans, some dressed in their army uniforms. I mean, the World War I had been only over for about 2 years. 3 years. Yeah. 1918, 20, 21. Yeah, 2.5 years. Okay. To attack the place, which is a suburb of Tulsa, known as Greenwood, the city's uniquely prosperous African American community. From every place of shelter up and down the tracks came screaming, shouting men to join in the rush toward the Negro section. A white witness named Coy Phillips later remembered, by dawn, and this is a quote from Coy, machine guns were sweeping the valley with their murderous fire. And this was said by a Greenwood resident named Dimple Bush. Old women, this is a quote, old women and men and children were running and screaming everywhere. There was even some airplanes that had been commandeered by the white mob to fly over Greenwood and drop incendiary devices, Molotov cocktails, I guess you could call them. Anyway, the bodies of the blacks that were killed by these whites were dumped into mass graves, and school kids were not taught about this. Of course they wouldn't be taught about this. It's Oklahoma, for God's sakes. Anyway, there has only recently been a memorial built to the deaths of the blacks in Greenwood. And these mass graves are now just being found with the use of cadaver dogs and other instruments. And there's a concerted effort to try to identify these hundreds of murdered blacks. Okay, enough of that. I'm running out of time again. I apologize for that, but I've got to play my play out music. You have been listening to The Midnight Skeptic on KPCA LP, Petaluma, California. And we're at 103.3 on the FM dial and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. Support community radio at patreon.com/Petaluma Community Access. And remember, think critically, think logically, but live joyously, and most importantly, pet your cats. Okay, that's it for another Midnight Skeptic show. KPCA has just this last couple of seconds cut me off at 58 minutes so that they can get in their station announcements and things, but I'm still going strong on YouTube. So I'm going to sign off to the YouTube people, and I'm going to try to get this up on YouTube this afternoon, and then I will relay this broadcast into Petaluma Community Access Dropbox, and this will be broadcast on Sunday, this coming Sunday night, 9 o'clock, on 103.3 FM and worldwide, www.kpca.fm. And I've appreciated doing this for all you people out here, and I hope that you put up with my many, many brain freezes and lack of being a professional broadcaster. So, goodbye until another 2 weeks.